shipmates in walking foreign sands. This old man was graceful with silver in his smile. He smoked a briar pipe and he walked for country miles, singing songs of shady sisters in old time Liberty, songs of love and songs of death, and songs that set men free. Hey! I've got 3 ships and 60 men across for ports unread. I'll stand at mast, let north winds blow, till half of us are dead. Land ho! Well, if I get my hands on a dollar bill, gonna buy a bottle and drink my fill. If I get my hands on a number 5, gonna skin that little girl alive. If I get my hands on a number 2, come back home and marry you, marry you, marry you. Alright.
I don't come.
You want to go with him?
Mad.
We got just as right of anybody else to use our beach. We pay the taxes, we obey the law, we don't do nothing wrong.
Hey, go ahead, go right through.
It has turned into what I would term an Italian comic opera, and all of the members of their cast are running around waving their arms and shouting and really don't know what it's all about. And it's just sort of like history repeating itself. You know, the original Columbus didn't know where he was when he came here, and the present day Columbus doesn't even know where it's at.
History will record that Columbus was really looking for India, and he sort of found America by mistake. Had he been able to look ahead about 500 years and see all the trouble he was going to cause, he might well have preferred to sail a little further west and discover Honolulu. Richard Threlkeld, CBS News, San Francisco.
It was Columbus Day today, and the banks were closed, and we didn't get any mail, and you couldn't get into the stores because they were so crowded with Columbus Day shoppers. And here in New York, you couldn't get across Fifth Avenue because of the parade. All that fuss, Bruce Morton says, over a mountebank.
Well, sure, parades. Sales, of course. But who was he, and what is this day about? Christopher Columbus really did sail the ocean blue in 1492, but most of the rest of what we learned in grade school wasn't quite right. Educated people back then knew the world was round, not flat. Columbus's mistake was in thinking it was a lot smaller than it really was, and so thinking he could sail to Asia.
Land ho!
His big mistake led him to the Americas.
And we plan to be here for 24 hours a day for the duration until this exhibit is closed.
Protesters picketed this Florida Museum of Natural History exhibit, called it racist, unfair to Native Americans. In fact, there's a whole revisionist school about what Columbus did. Historian Claudia Bushman.
He had nowhere to go but down, and he has gone down somewhat in the last 100 years. Many of the things that people object to about Columbus in this century were things that didn't occur to anyone in the past. But it is certainly true that the native populations were mistreated by Columbus's men and so on.
I declare that this is Spanish soil for all time, and that the natives hereof are subject to Spanish rule.
Columbus talked about trying to convert the natives to Christianity. In fact, he and the adventurers who followed him killed the native inhabitants.
It is an unmitigated picture of horror.
Hans Koning wrote an anti-Columbus history and is planning a revisionist exhibit for 1992, the 500th anniversary of Columbus's first voyage here. He uses these woodcuts made after Columbus but based on eyewitness accounts to make his case.
Every Indian has to bring in a certain amount of gold dust every month, and if they fail to do so, their hands are chopped off. Then they started hanging the chiefs in rows of 13. By 13, that was in honor of Jesus and the 12 apostles. I mean, it's an unmitigated tale of horror.
Columbus wrote that all the inhabitants could be made slaves. We could make them all do whatever we want. Certainly he didn't discover America. An exhibition currently at New York's Metropolitan Museum reminds us that Native American culture dates back 3,000 years.
We certainly don't want to whitewash history.
Janet Justra speaks for the Quincentenary Jubilee Commission, the U.S. group, which together with Spain will commemorate the 500th anniversary of the trip with, among other things, a recreation of the voyage.
Regardless of what happened in 1492, the most important thing to remember is that a link was created between the old world and this new, uncharted world that was never broken.
She's right. Columbus didn't discover America, wasn't even the first European to reach it, but he changed both continents forever. Why not a parade? Bruce Morton, CBS News, New York.
Of course, Queen Isabella is the one who really has a legitimate beef against Columbus. She paid for the whole thing. She was a queen and he was just a sailor. But it's not Isabella, Ohio, or Isabella, Georgia. It's Columbus. District of Isabella is where the capital ought to be, but nobody ever said history is fair.
The Columbus Day Parade in New York City, one of many around the country in honor of Christopher Columbus. In tonight's Eye on America, we're going to take a closer look at the most famous of the explorers. Nearly 500 years after he came to the New World, what do we really know about him? Bruce Morton reports on America, Discovering Columbus.
We don't know what he looked like. All the portraits are by painters who never saw him.
He was a deep, troubled man. He didn't tell the truth to himself or to his followers.
He came seeking gold and never did know where he was or what he'd found.
He thought he had found India, so he named the people Indians, says, don't go away, I'll be right back. And unfortunately for the Indians, he kept his promise.
100 years ago, a lot of Americans learned about Columbus from McGuffey's Reader, where Washington Irving wrote that Columbus tried to civilize the natives, build cities, introduce the useful arts. You just don't hear that point of view much anymore.
Is Columbus a hero or a villain? And the answer is both. I think I was both.
Joseph Laufer is a professional speaker and an amateur historian who plays and lectures about Columbus in schools, this day in West Deptford, New Jersey. He stresses Columbus's exploitation of the natives he found.
Plop the old flag right in the beach, and all of a sudden I have just taken their land away from them. What do you think? Do I get an Academy Award for that? Are you going to give me an honor? No. No. That wasn't right, was it? No. I'm sorry about that.
Laufer talks about the spread of disease. So does the Smithsonian Institution's exhibit, Seeds of Change.
It wasn't Columbus himself, but all the Europeans who came after him. They brought with them, and with their animals, diseases that had never been in these areas before.
Smallpox, measles, and other...
An electronic display charts the spread of killing diseases north and south. Millions of Native Americans died.
The Columbian legacy I regard as largely a sad, pitiful tragedy.
We are on the eve of beginning...
In Mayor Dana Reinhardt's Columbus, Ohio, they're celebrating the idea of discovery. They have a statue, a life-size Santa Maria, but they have some second thoughts, too.
I wish I just could keep remembering him the way he was, you know, discovered America and didn't necessarily have to know everything.
Hey, you're savages. We want to show you what it's like to be civilized.
Second thoughts in New Jersey as well.
I didn't like the part when he took over the lands with the Indians.
And he was really greedy, so I think he was mostly bad.
He wasn't the one that really discovered America.
Who did, do you think?
The Indians and the Vikings, probably. And maybe even before that, the cavemen.
Disease and slavery followed Columbus, but so did other things. Thousands, then millions of people seeking new lives, seeking hope and promise.
Two old worlds met, and a new world was recreated as a result of it. That's why this Columbus story, in my opinion, is a global story and not old world versus new world.
Immigrants came from Europe, but also from Asia, from all over the world. And the United States keeps changing. More Hispanics, more Asians, a new emphasis in classrooms on teaching all the cultures which make up America, not just the European. Sometime in the next century, what we now call minorities will be the majority in an America which keeps on changing.
Hey, everything I did wasn't all that bad. I helped create this great land. I started something, and it's great.
He never knew what he'd found, could never have imagined what it would become. Bruce Morton, CBS News, West Deptford, New Jersey.
Trying to figure out Columbus, part of our world tonight. Looking ahead to the final hours of trying to figure out the Thomas confirmation today, Christopher Columbus landed on a Caribbean island thinking he was off the coast of Asia. He founded the first fully documented European colonies in the Americas and later lost control of them through mismanagement. Was he a genius, a tyrant, or both? As John Blackstone reports, the argument is gaining momentum today.
I'm signing land!
In spite of movies and parades, it has not been smooth sailing for the great navigator this Columbus Day.
He took 6 slaves that day.
As some see it, Columbus is responsible for just about everything that's gone wrong since 1492.
Somebody's got to take the blame, so I guess they have to make it for 500 years, and they blame Columbus for that.
Joseph Servetto was all dressed up and ready to wade ashore triumphantly as part of the festivities in San Francisco yesterday.
Have you seen Columbus?
Not yet.
I'm looking for him. But the welcoming party was so unfriendly that Columbus just waved from way out beyond the breakwater and kept on sailing.
Maybe next year he might show up.
Native Americans decided this anniversary was time to remind the world this was their land before Columbus showed up.
He came to conquer us as a people, to enslave us as a people.
But those who trace their ancestors to Italy declared their pride in the first Italian to come this way.
We have a right to celebrate what is maybe the most important event of the last 700 years.
Along the parade route, there were many who crossed other oceans to get here. In a changing America, there are those who say it's time for the nation to rethink the way it remembers its past. That rethinking is already taking place in many classrooms.
We're trying to get the idea across that he was an evil, greedy, bloodthirsty person.
That's Columbus, as depicted in many textbooks today.
People never talked about the Indians' perspectives.
The point isn't to destroy Columbus, but to tell America's story from more than just a European point of view.
Columbus Day should be a day of thinking, not only celebrating, but thinking of what really happened that day.
What really happened this day 500 years ago was the inevitable meeting of the New and Old Worlds, and the beginning of all the bad and all the good that has followed. John Blackstone, CBS News, San Francisco.